Fiancé assaults best friend at bachelor party. Wedding cancelled, friendships shattered, and legal battles looming in shocking turn of events. Original post. I don't know what to do. My, F28 Finance, M28, Alex has a BFF, Danny 28, since they were 4. She's not like the usual Reddit BFF. She's a lovely sweet person who has never crossed boundaries with Alex or their 2 other friends Marcus and Daniel. The 4 are very close. Danny is gay and always was. She is very much a woman but likes to dress in jeans and t-shirts and not in any feminine clothing. She is lean tall, has short hair and is just one of the boys in a lot of ways. This weekend was the Alex bachelor party. All 4 plus 2 other of Alex's friends went along. It was to a coastal town that's well known for hosting bachelor and bachelorette parties, but there's no strip club or anything. They stayed in an Airbnb and scuba diving and kayaking planned. First night I went to an okay dinner restaurant and nightclub and home. Last night was the issue. They went to the nightclub and headed back to the house. Marcus and Daniel, who are both single, brought back 2 girls from the nightclub and got busy in their bedrooms. The rest of the group were drinking in the living room, but things started to get a bit noisy. 2 of the friends began complaining that they never got the chance to go to a strip club and had never seen breasts and buttocks. They started blaming their wives for this and even resorted to calling them offensive names. Danny told them to shush as it was ruining the mood, and they both thought it would be funny if they saw Danny's body naked to make up for it. The thing is, Alex joined in and they stripped her. She was screaming loudly and Marcus and Daniel came running and rescued Danny and put her in a bedroom with the girls and had a fight with the 3 men. Daniel doesn't drink due to a chronic medical condition and the medication he is on. So they packed up and took Danny and the 2 girls and left the other 3. Danny was hysterical and Marcus wanted her to go to the police but she wouldn't. She was afraid to go home, so they ended up dropping the girls off and taking Danny to her parents, which was an hour away. Marcus was at my door at 7 a.m. this morning and he told me what happened, that if he ever sees Alex again he's afraid of how things could go. He told me that if he can convince Danny to press charges he will. Then he left. Alex returned about 3 this afternoon. He was a thing normally until I told him Marcus had visited. He was very nervous and tried to play down what happened as a joke that got out of hand. I'm devastated. I heard him out but he knew I wasn't accepting what he was saying. I told him Danny may be going to the police and he got very panicked and pale. He said she had him blocked and he wanted to go talk to her. I told him she wasn't at her place as she was too afraid he or his buddies would turn up there. I asked him to leave and he didn't want to go, but I insisted. He was crying saying it was a prank that got out of hand. I heard him out only as a courtesy to our 2-year relationship, but I'm done. I don't know this man. I don't know if I should reach out to Danny or just do nothing. Marcus and I have been in constant contact and he agrees that I have no option but to end things. I don't know where to start with canceling everything as the wedding was in 5 weeks, but it seems trivial compared to what Danny is going through right now. Marcus is convinced that Danny is going to the police after talking to her parents, so I think Alex is in trouble. I can't support him on this. Maybe I'm wrong as he was drunk and probably had taken other things, but this was his friend from age 4 and he did this to her. I've not blocked Alex, but I've not replied or picked up any of his calls. Update. Sorry, I don't know how to do updates, so posting this separately. It's been a terrible day. I can't reach out to my friends yet as I'm ashamed. I did tell my parents and my brother and they have been wonderful. My brother brought his friend with him when he came to stay, and today both of them packed up every bit of my ex's stuff and took it to his parents' house. X was there and just asked if that meant I was finished with him, and my brother said yes, and did he really expect any other reaction? His father intervened and told him not to say anything more. He told my brother to tell me to contact him about canceling the wedding. I'm not contacting his father ever. My parents are handling the cancellation of the wedding, and my father got in contact with my cousin who is a lawyer and he is going to help and advise me as needed. I've to disentangle myself from X on leases, bank account savings and such, although my brother made me transfer all of my money from joint account savings and daily accounts to my own account. It's a mess. I tried to ring Danny but she isn't up for speaking to anyone, so I just texted her that I was there for her and that I had broken up with Alex. She hasn't replied and I don't expect she will. She's in a bad way apparently. Daniel spent 3 hours with me today. There's a lot going on, but I'm afraid to say too much for fear of damaging any court case. Just to say, there are 2 videos of the incident. One by Jeb, one of the 2 friends. A lot of it is chaotic, but the last part is clear and telling apparently. The owners of the rental house apparently have gotten involved and have footage, but I can't say more. When Marcus left me he went to both those guys' wives and told them what happened. Jeb's wife has been very helpful, apparently, and she has split from him. The other guy's wife too has left him. Things are going how most of you want them to go, that's all I will say. Well, I will add it was worse than what Marcus shared. Daniel told me that before Danny found her style she had long hair and dressed feminine and was stunningly beautiful, and all three of them were in love with her as teens. Alex took her rejection very personally apparently, and Daniel says he was angry and bitter for a couple of years but hid it from her. They thought he had gotten over it, but Daniel feels this smacks of revenge against her. Scary if this is true. I have and continue to receive hundreds of texts from Alex. He told me his father told him to stop texting me, but he can't. I haven't replied or blocked based on your advice. This is very hard and I don't know what way all this is going to end up. Sorry about any mistakes and typos, I'm not doing well. If there's more I will post again if I'm able. Update 2. Hi, all my last update is removed, but if anyone is interested I thought I'd post the latest and get some advice. I got a call from Danny. Daniel has been ever present and I'm guessing it was because he knew she was going to call. There's a lot more to the story. The first night was normal as I said, but on Saturday Alex, Jeb and their friend decided not to go scuba diving with Danny, Daniel and Marcus. Danny was feeling very hungover, so after an hour she gave up and went back to the Airbnb. She walked into the living room to find all three guys engaging in sexual acts with two women. Jeb shouted at her to get out as this was costing them a fortune. The women were escorts. She left and went back to the boat and only told Marcus what she saw. When they all went back later, Alex told her to not tell me as it was just his last bit of freedom. She told him she was disgusted with him and that he wasn't free. She told him she would have to think about what to do. Marcus convinced her to stay another night as he and Daniel had met the two girls the night before and were seeing them again that night, and if Danny wanted to leave then Daniel would have to take her as he was her ride and there wasn't public transport in the tiny town. So Alex cheated as did the other two. Marcus told their wives that morning but not me. He was going to do it in stages as he knew I was in shock. The actual assault went further than Marcus told me also. And while Alex hadn't actually done anything beyond pulling off her clothes, unlike the other two, he stood by and watched and did nothing to help her. She said she thought he had taken shrooms earlier but couldn't be sure. Marcus and Daniel did rescue her but things had already escalated. She went to the police immediately and she got to her parents. The Airbnb owners had also gone independently when they saw the footage. All three men are facing the consequences of their actions. Danny told me she was sorry she didn't leave and told me immediately like she wanted to do. She is very distraught and I didn't want to make things worse for her. I don't think I'm needed for any legal proceedings, so I finally blocked Alex and his parents. The wedding is cancelled. And I'm just starting to disentangle myself from Alex on bank accounts and such. Here's my issue. I'm feeling very angry towards Marcus. It feels like he didn't really care about me. He stopped Danny from telling me so he could continue to shack up with the girl he met. He apparently feels guilty because if they had left Danny would not have been attacked. He didn't do me the courtesy of telling me that Alex cheated that morning like he did with the other two wives. It's not like he was sparing my feelings because my ex assaulting another woman was a pretty damn bad thing to hear. He didn't tell me the full extent of the attack. Danny is still unsure if Alex wasn't just waiting his turn, or if all he was going to do was watch. I should have been told that ASAP. And not from Danny because the conversation was incredibly difficult for her. Daniel didn't know about the escorts at all and didn't know Marcus hadn't shared the full story of what they saw when they burst in. Daniel has been my rock. I need some perspective here. Is it okay to be angry at Marcus? Is it misplaced anger? I'm pretty angry at Alex though, and that's all I feel towards him. Can anyone give me a different perspective I'm missing? Marcus and I had been in constant contact. He's already back at work, so it was messages/texts and occasional calls. He actually visited last night but I didn't open the door to him. Daniel is saying whatever I feel right now is okay, but I think he's just placating me. I don't know who to trust anymore. I don't have to have any more contact with Alex and think the case will move along without me. I'm thinking of telling Daniel that I need a break from him and Marcus and that group of friends. Danny and I have said we will stay in touch, but I can't see us being very close. My best friend who I finally confided in thinks I should just step away from them all now for good and try to move forward. My parents agree and think it's necessary for healing. My brother thinks Daniel has been nothing but great and I shouldn't cut him off. But they all seem to be a package deal, but without Alex now obviously. So I think it's probably all or nothing. What should I do? I don't want to be ungrateful, but a clean break feels right. Update 3. I've been putting off writing this update, but I'm back because I need even more advice and an outside perspective. The comments have been pretty helpful so far. Thank you. It's long, but I'll do my best to shorten it. Trigger warnings for SA drugs violence. First of all, Danny and I have bonded. She and I talk every day and message constantly. I didn't expect that, but it's truly wonderful. She says she needs a good straight friend right now, JK, and honestly she is a great person and has been a huge support to me despite what she has been going through. I told her I posted here as I felt guilty as to tell my story I had to tell hers. She was okay with it. She is thinking of waiving her right to anonymity when the trial comes as she wants everyone to know she was raped and by who. Dani has quit her job, moved to her parents full-time and is in therapy. She's just about okay, surviving still rather than living, but she is so strong and amazing. Justice moves slowly here, so there isn't too much of an update on the legal process. Marcus was told however he would not face charges for assault for attacking the two actively attacking Dani. I went back to work and it was awful. I work for a tiny startup. Oscar, who works there, is friendly with Marcus and my brother. We are all into martial arts and attend the same dojo. So I'm getting a lot of pity. I'd have been okay with sympathy or empathy, but being pitied sucks. Still, it's better than being home all day doing nothing. Daniel gave me space as I asked, and he is truly a good guy. There's nothing romantic there at all though. I'm not in a fit state for anything like that and won't be for a very, very long time, and he is just a good guy. No ulterior motives. We text a bit and he is in a lot of contact with Dani. I got a letter in the mail from Alex. Said he held out hope while I hadn't blocked him, but once I did he was distraught. He told me he doesn't want to freak me out by turning up in person, and I know that wouldn't look good for him anyway, but he just wanted to tell his side of the story. He said he was pressured into doing stuff with the escorts and he only got a BJ. The other two were really pressuring him to do more, but he didn't and says he regrets even doing that. He admits he was angry at Dani because she told him he either told me about the cheating or she would, but he knew he was totally in the wrong. He knew I would dump him for cheating, so he took everything he could get his hands on. He's not even sure what he took, and while he remembers pulling off Dani's shoes he doesn't remember anything else. So he was just peer pressured and drunk and drugged up, and he did nothing wrong at all basically. I was just disgusted to read this. His total lack of accountability is just sickening. I'm not responding to him ever. Any future mail goes unopened into the trash. I'm in therapy, but it's early days and I'm not seeing progress yet. That leaves me with Marcus. He knows I've been angry with him and he is desperate to talk it out. I probably feel too much anger towards him but find it hard not to. He is still feeling very guilty over making Dani stay. I don't understand why I feel so angry towards him. It's not on the level of anger I feel towards Alex by any means, but I'm still hesitant to talk to him. I think he made mistakes, but in my heart I know he was dealing with a lot that morning, but I just wouldn't have been there when Alex got home if I had known the truth. I feel Marcus should have told me everything, as I was the one who had to face Alex alone. I know I should hear him out, but I'm finding it very hard. How can I get past this? I want to clear the air with him even if we are never friends, and me cutting him out is really having a terrible effect on him. I know he rescued Dani and has been constantly checking up on her. I know he can be a good guy, but part of me feels he wasn't all good that weekend. I don't know. I haven't touched this in therapy as we are just starting and are talking about Alex. I need advice on how to deal with this. I wanted to give it some time, but Marcus' mental health is pretty poor, and maybe by not meeting him I'm just making him worse? How can I find it in me to just bite the bullet and hear him out? Why am I so angry with him? How can I move past this? I don't want to be angry at him. I'm so exhausted from being angry at him and at Alex, and I want it to stop, at least towards Marcus. But it won't. Help! I'm visiting Dani for the weekend that should have been my wedding. We are going to have a low TR's marathon and her mother is making a cheesecake. My own family has been wonderful in every way, but Dani is truly why I'm still standing. Edit. Forgot to say it wasn't an Airbnb. It was just a privately rented house. I just assumed incorrectly it was. After kicking me out for my golden child half-brother, 6 months later, Dad now wants me to lie to cover up his crime or they'll go to jail. I, male, 18, turned 18 approximately 4 months ago, and my father kicked me out 6 months ago after my jerk half-brother Derek, 24M, wanted to go back home. He didn't want to rent a place like a normal person, so he chose to live with my father. Derek is my father's kid from his first relationship, but Derek's mother and father split up soon after he was born, so they didn't have much of a relationship after that. Derek is much closer to my father than he is to his mother, so we spent a lot of time together growing up since he came over more frequently than was legally required under his custody agreement. I believe he was meant to spend half of the month with my father, but he was always present. Or maybe that's just my brain exaggerating things because I despise spending time with him, but my father compelled us to. I also know that he disliked me and considered me a threat. My mother died a few years ago following a lengthy fight with lung cancer, and that's when things started to go wrong between me and my father. Don't get me wrong, Things had been awful between us since I was a child. I suppose my father didn't really want a child like me, or perhaps he didn't want a child in general. Whatever it was, he treated me strangely when I was younger, and it nearly always seemed like he didn't want me around. Most of the time, he was angry with me and yelled at me for little matters. He never showed me affection, and when I tried to win him over, he responded with indifference. However, Derek was a very different guy. When Derek was around the house, my father transformed into the best father in the world, doing everything I asked of him. He compelled Derek and me to spend time together despite the fact that we both expressed a strong dislike for each other. Derek did not like me because he regarded me as a threat, and I did not like him since he used to bully me as a child. He was always trying to fight with me and push me around just because he could. He felt he could get away with it since my father would never speak against him. When I complained to my father about Derek being harsh with me, he told me to toughen up and deal with it because, allegedly, that's how boys should play, and he didn't want me to grow up to be a pansy. I assumed it was what my father expected of me, so I gradually learned to swallow my pride and accept it. I would never fight back because I didn't want to upset my father, and I knew fighting with Derek was a definite way to get shouted at. It didn't matter whether Derek was screwing things up for me, whenever I battled with him, I was always in the wrong. My father didn't care about the story. Whatever happened, I was always the bad person. It was clear that my father had a favorite, and it wasn't me, not even for a second. He didn't think it was weird that Derek was picking on me, even though I was 6 years younger than him. Derek gradually modified his techniques of bullying me. When he began high school, he shifted to tormenting me with his pals because physically striking me was no longer effective as we grew older. Before that, school had been my safe haven because I was still in elementary school while he was in middle school, and we were in different buildings, so he couldn't reach me there. But after I started middle school, we were in the same building, and he and his cronies ganged up on me, constantly making fun of me. They even propagated malicious falsehoods about me, such as suggesting I was mentally handicapped. All the seniors recognized me as Derek's dumb younger brother. I'm not even kidding, that's what they used to call me. They would even call me slurs, which made things very tough for me. When kids approach middle school, they become more concerned with their reputation, so even my elementary school pals would no longer speak to me since I wasn't cool enough to hang out with them. It wasn't until Derek graduated that I got the school all to myself and could exist peacefully. I had a couple of friends, but most people just believed them, and I let them get away with it because I was so tired of fighting all the time that I couldn't bear to dispute. Things at home were exactly as horrible as they had always been since Derek and my father would never miss a chance to throw me down and make me feel like an idiot. The funniest thing was that I wasn't even an idiot. I received decent marks and excelled in science and other topics, but my father and Derek didn't care. Derek was a football player, but he was also a good student. You can imagine how difficult things must have been for me at home. Derek was everything I was not. Athletic, academically gifted, and exactly the kind of kid my father had always desired. On the other hand, there was me, who was completely average. They never failed to remind me of how insignificant and mediocre I was. My mother attempted to protect me most of the time, but my father was a real sweet talker, and he would convince her that what they said was just for fun and didn't mean anything. My mother, who was normally nice and sweet, was deeply in love with my father and never saw him for who he truly was. She did her best to protect me and I admired her efforts, but it wasn't enough. My father and Derek continued to bully me as long as they could. Finally, Derek left for college, and I felt relieved. My father was still present, but he was a lot less irritating to deal with without Derek continually picking on me. But before I could experience what it was like to live with my parents without Derek, my mother was stricken with lung cancer. It was extremely tough for us to accept since it felt like our entire world had been broken. My father and I only had one thing in common. We both adored my mother, thus her illness devastated us both. Instead of bringing our family closer, my father chose to make the worst of it. My mother was already hurting, but instead of my father and I putting up a brave front for her, he began to distance himself from her even more. Previously, he would at least speak to me, even if only to mock me, but following my mother's illness, he stopped doing that and began pretending I didn't exist at all. I can forgive him for it because we were both in pain, and he simply chose a different approach. I would have preferred that my mother's dilemma brought us closer together, but that was plainly not to be. Even if it was meant to be, my father was the type of person who would make it impossible because, for some reason, he despised me and couldn't tolerate the thought of me being happy. My mother's illness worsened over time, and my father's temper began to affect me. He would either not speak to me at all and utterly ignore me, or he would be really hostile to me. He almost made me weep several times because he was so disrespectful. I attempted to keep the peace in the family by not responding to my father since I knew it would only give him more reasons to berate and pick on me. When my mother was unwell, Derek would take it easy on me when he returned home from college, which I enjoyed. He wasn't polite to me, but at least he was human, which was all I could ask for. Things were horrible when my mother was still alive, but once she died, I went from frying pan to fire. Things were very quiet around the house for the first few months after my mother passed away. That meant I'd do all of the labor while my father stayed unresponsive. He was functional, he went to work, came home and ate dinner, but nothing else. I was concerned for him and phoned my grandparents several times, telling them that I suspected my father was depressed, but they did not take me seriously. They either didn't care enough about their son to check on him after the funeral, or they detested me as much as my father and refused to do what I asked. After a few months, my father began to return to his old self. Unfortunately, it also included excessive drinking, which made me feel bad about myself again. He would continuously force me to do chores around the house, which was quite exhausting because I was not only going to school but also doing all of the housework that my mother used to do even when she was sick. My father and I were able to complete everything, but after her death, all of the duty fell to me. I couldn't even complain because if I did, my father would tell me that I wasn't bringing in any money, so this was the least I could do to stay there. It was extremely offensive, but I had nowhere else to go, so I just had to put up with it. For a long time, the only thing I looked forward to was going to college since it meant I could finally be free of my father and not have to return home. I no longer considered that place to be my home because it had stopped feeling like home to me when my mother died. I could have moved out and started living with my mother's parents when she died, but they lived a long distance away, and I still had a year of school remaining, so that was not an option. Then a few months ago, when my father learned that his golden kid Derek would be returning home, he kicked me out. I ended up moving in with my grandparents. Derek had moved out for college a few years ago and has not returned to live with us since. After graduation, he found work and opted to stay where he was because his partner wanted to start a life away from home. Derek only came back for the holidays on occasion. He married his fiancé around 2 years ago since she was pregnant. They had just graduated and it felt like the perfect time to get married. Surprisingly, I got invited to the wedding. Derek didn't torture me for one day. My mother was also present, despite her health, and while Derek wasn't close to her, he couldn't deny that everyone liked her. Derek wasn't very close to his own mother because she was a lousy parent. Derek's mother was already in her 4th marriage at the time of his wedding, and it appeared that her major purpose in life was to be wealthy. She worked and made her own money, but it came at the expense of her connection with her kid. I suppose that explains why Derek was so attached to our father. He only had one parent who actually cared about him, and he didn't want to share that parent with me. Anyway, Derek married and had a child shortly afterwards. They had been living peacefully for the previous 2 years, but 6 months ago, for some reason, they decided to return. My father notified me about it 2 weeks before Derek was meant to arrive home. He was arrogant about it and sat me down one day to tell me I needed to find a place to live since Derek was returning. I had to give up my room. We had 3 bedrooms, so I questioned why they couldn't take the guest room. My father informed me that Derek and his wife would be living in the guest room and using my room as a nursery. It was allegedly important that I leave the house because I was about to turn 18 and become an adult. My father's insistence that I leave simply because Derek was relocating back with his family seemed unnecessary and selfish to me. I tried to argue with him, but there was no point, he had already made his decision. He gave me 2 weeks to leave and if I didn't, he said he'd contact the cops. I'm sure there was a legal way to challenge this, but I hadn't considered it at the time. I was terrified since I didn't trust my father and knew he was perfectly capable of kicking me out without warning. I scrambled to find a place and eventually decided to move in with my grandparents. I had resisted doing so because they lived so far away and I still needed to finish school, but I had no other choice. There were only a few weeks left in high school, so I was willing to take the chance. I moved out after a few days because I did not want to be present when Derek returned home with his wife and child. My father didn't seem to care when I moved out, and he didn't even say goodbye to me on the day I packed and left with the movers. My grandparents had come all the way to pick me up in their vehicle, and they were about to get into my father, but I told them it wasn't worth the hassle. It has been 6 months since that day, and I'm still living with my grandparents. I haven't spoken to my father since he kicked me out, and I had no intention of doing so again. I was meant to start college in a few weeks, and everything was already set up. I had absolutely no reason to speak with my father or Derek again. Unfortunately, they were the ones who had to contact me since something had happened, and they needed me to help them out. They paid me a visit a few days ago, which astonished me because I didn't expect them to contact me at all. Still, my grandparents let them in, and I decided to talk to them because they sounded desperate. I discovered that Derek had returned with his family because he had lost his job and was struggling to pay his rent, so he took the difficult decision to return. His wife was fine with it because she preferred to be a stay-at-home mother and did not want to work till their child was older, so this was their best option. When they returned, they anticipated to find work quickly, but that was not the case because none of the nearby businesses were hiring, and persons with Derek's skill set were extremely prevalent. He wasn't a spectacular candidate, either. My father somehow managed to secure him a position at the company where he worked. Neither of them were happy about it because it paid less than Derek's previous salary, but it was all they had, so they had to make the best of it. Derek had been stealing from the company for several months until it was discovered a few weeks ago. My father and Derek were both in trouble because their bosses suspected they were working together and threatened to sue them if they did not return the money immediately. The only reason they hadn't been sued yet was because it was a family business and the CEO was a close friend of my mother's. He hadn't filed a case against them for embezzlement yet because he respected her, but he wasn't going to wait long. My father and Derek asked me to help them. They asked me to say that they required the money for my college fund and had been stealing for the purpose rather than personal gain. My father hoped that this would persuade the CEO to be patient with them and give them more time to return the money. They knew they'd still be fired, but at least they wouldn't go to prison. They were counting on me to assist them and build the ideal picture of the poor, innocent victim. I could not believe they had the arrogance to ask for this after how they had treated me my entire life. I answered no almost instantly, without even thinking about it, because their plan was stupid, and I didn't want to be a part of that. When I informed them I wasn't interested in assisting them, they became irritated and told me I had to since there was a very real possibility they would wind up in jail. They stated I couldn't allow an old grudge to spoil their lives. I told them it wasn't a little grudge and it surely wasn't from years ago. My father had only recently kicked me out, and it hadn't even been a year, so I'd consider it rather recent. But that wasn't the only reason I didn't want to aid them. I thought their scheme was dishonest, and I knew the guy my father worked for. As I already stated, my mother and he were very close friends and he really liked me. He and my mother had grown up together, and I used to address him as uncle whenever he was over. Even at my mother's funeral, we had a pleasant chat and liked one another. I moved out after a few days because I did not want to be present when Derek returned home with his wife and child. My father didn't seem to care when I moved out, and he didn't even say goodbye to me on the day I packed and left with the movers. My grandparents had come all the way to pick me up in their vehicle, and they were about to get into my father, but I told them it wasn't worth the hassle. It has been 6 months since that day, and I'm still living with my grandparents. I haven't spoken to my father since he kicked me out, and I had no intention of doing so again. I was meant to start college in a few weeks, and everything was already set up. I had absolutely no reason to speak with my father or Derek again. Unfortunately, they were the ones who had to contact me since something had happened, and they needed me to help them out. They paid me a visit a few days ago, which astonished me because I didn't expect them to contact me at all. Still, my grandparents let them in, and I decided to talk to them because they sounded desperate. I discovered that Derek had returned with his family because he had lost his job and was struggling to pay his rent, so he made the difficult decision to return. His wife was fine with it because she preferred to be a stay-at-home mother and did not want to work till their child was older, so this was their best option. When they returned, they anticipated finding work quickly, but that was not the case because none of the nearby businesses were hiring. And persons with Derek's skill set were extremely prevalent. He wasn't a spectacular candidate either. My father somehow managed to secure him a position at the company where he worked. Neither of them were happy about it because it paid less than Derek's previous salary, but it was all they had, so they had to make the best of it. Derek had been stealing from the company for several months until it was discovered a few weeks ago. My father and Derek were both in trouble because their bosses suspected they were working together and threatened to sue them if they did not return the money immediately. The only reason they hadn't been sued yet was because it was a family business and the CEO was a close friend of my mother's. He hadn't filed a case against them for embezzlement yet because he respected her, but he wasn't going to wait long. My father and Derek asked me to help them. They asked me to say that they required the money for my college fund and had been stealing for that purpose rather than personal gain. My father hoped that this would persuade the CEO to be patient with them and give them more time to return the money. They knew they'd still be fired, but at least they wouldn't go to prison. They were counting on me to assist them and build the ideal picture of the poor, innocent victim. I could not believe they had the arrogance to ask for this after how they had treated me my entire life. I answered no almost instantly, without even thinking about it, because their plan was stupid, and I didn't want to be a part of that. When I informed them I wasn't interested in assisting them, they became irritated and told me I had to since there was a very real possibility they would wind up in jail. They stated I couldn't allow an old grudge spoil their lives. I told them it wasn't a little grudge, and it surely wasn't from years ago. My father had only recently kicked me out, and it hadn't even been a year, so I'd consider it rather recent. But that wasn't the only reason I didn't want to aid them. I thought their scheme was dishonest, and I knew the guy my father worked for. As I already stated, my mother and he were very close friends and he really liked me. He and my mother had grown up together, and I used to address him as uncle whenever he was over. Even at my mother's funeral, we had a pleasant chat and liked one another. My mother had actually told him to give my father a job at his company when he was struggling, but instead of being grateful, Derek had tried to make a joke of these people, and now my father was attempting to cover it all up by using me as a shield. I thought that was quite low, and I couldn't in good conscience be a part of it. So I informed them that it would be in their best interest to simply pay off whatever amount they had stolen rather than try to cover it up with more lies, since I was not going to side with them. They might land up in jail if they tried to deceive him again. In truth, they should have been pleased that they were given the opportunity to repay the money and avoid a lawsuit, which they would almost certainly lose. That would jeopardize their future since they would undoubtedly go to jail. They had no idea how simple things were for them right now, or how complicated things would become if they carried out their mad plan. I tried to explain it to them, but my father became enraged and refused to listen to my speech. If I wanted to help them, I would support their strategy rather than give them useless advice. So I informed him I was not going to be a part of this, and to my astonishment my father began crying. I'd never seen anything like this before, and it made me very uneasy. He informed me that he had been banking on me because, at the end of the day, I was his son, and that no matter what had happened in the past, he would have supported me if I had been in a similar situation. He stated he expected the same from me because this was such a big matter, and he didn't want to go to prison. Derek felt the same way and urged me to help them since he knew I was popular among my mother's friends and was the only one who could help them. My mother would have made things much easier, but now that she was gone, I was the next best person to deal with it, and they relied on me. It was difficult, but I still had to decline them. I pushed them to come clean and pay back the money they owed. They were enraged and claimed that the only reason I was screwing them over was because they used to tease me when I was younger, and they were dissatisfied with how I handled things today. They departed after that, but I'm still thinking about it and the guilt is eating at me. I keep picturing them in jail, and it just doesn't seem right. At the same time, I do not want to be a part of something unlawful or immoral. It would be an insult to my mother since I would be using her friendship to manipulate a very close friend of hers. I'm terribly torn about what I should do, and time is of the key because my dad and Derek don't have forever to pay off their debt. So am I a jerk for refusing to lie and cover up for my father and half-brother, who have bullied me my whole life? Update 1. I've made a decision, and I believe I'll keep not assisting them out. Not only is it immoral and unethical, but it is also unlawful. And I refuse to be a part of it. If my father and Derek want to stay out of jail, they will have to handle this themselves. It's not like they're in mortal peril. They've been offered the opportunity to make things right, repay the money Derek stole, and get out of this without jeopardizing their image. They can choose to return all of the money and handle this themselves, so I have no cause to feel guilty. The majority of the comments here urge that I keep out of this, not just because my father and Derek were terrible people, but also because what they were doing was horrific, and I wouldn't be able to carry it on my conscience and move on as they would. We're clearly not made of the same stuff, and I wouldn't want to do something like this, which is why I've decided to keep out of it. If they contact me after this, I will block them. For the record, they are already blocked everywhere, but I'm sure they'll try alternative numbers or social media accounts to reach me. My grandparents also believe I'm doing the right thing by remaining out of this because they are responsible for cleaning up the mess they made. It makes no sense to expect anything from me after how they've treated me for so long. Update 2. Hi. So, as expected, my father texted me today. He last visited me 8 days ago and we haven't spoken since. As I already stated, he called me from a different number that I was unfamiliar with and I answered the phone unintentionally. I hung up as soon as I heard my father's voice on the other end, but I was a little slow to block him, so he was able to text me. In the message, he claimed he understood I didn't want to talk about it any further, but he and Derek were in serious difficulty and needed my help. He claimed that their employer was constantly breathing down their necks, threatening to sue if they did not refund the money. It made me feel guilty, but I texted him back and told him that I would not be assisting them and that he should start searching for alternative ways to refund the money rather than avoiding the matter. I then blocked him, hoping he understood where I was coming from. Even if he doesn't, I hope he does the right thing. I don't want to have a father in prison. Update 3. Hey, I haven't heard back from my father yet, but my grandparents contacted my mother's friend, the CEO, to inquire about his plans. We hadn't contacted him previously because he's a busy man, and we didn't want to press him too hard, but we wanted to know what was going on because communicating with my father or Derek was no longer an option. So my grandfather spoke with him, and he informed us that he intended to file a lawsuit if he did not receive the money back within a few months. He claimed he was willing to let everything go due to his friendship with my mother, but he couldn't forgive the debt. Honestly, I respected that. He was much more tolerant than most people would have been in this position. He even apologized to me, saying he was sorry for what was occurring, but I told him it was no big deal because I no longer live with my father, and honestly, my father deserves it. We don't know what will happen, but I believe my father is wise enough to realize that he needs to repay the money in some way to avoid going to jail. It will take some time, but I'm confident they will work it out, and I won't have to worry. I also had a long conversation with my mother's buddy, who informed me that before she died, my mother had spoken with him and stated that if I ever wanted to intern anywhere for some fast cash or simply get a job in general, his door was always open. That's good to know, and I'll keep it in mind for the future. Even after she's gone, my mother still looks out for me, which makes me very happy.